That happened such a long time. Why are you bringing this up? It's gonna cause problem. Big problem.
It's gonna cause problems for who? For you?
Yeah.
Why would it? Okay.
No, he can take it out. He can take it out on me.
You had the opportunity years ago to put a stop to it and you didn't. Why didn't you do something then? After that argument that you witnessed?
I couldn't do nothing. You and him supposed to do when the child left the police station.
Are you kidding me? I was a child. That was your job to do. So you're saying you didn't do anything because you didn't want to have to go before the court? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
That's why you never did anything about it. Because you didn't want to go before the court.
Right.
So you were okay with him molesting me as long as you didn't have to go to court?
Yeah. But you know what I did to his
You didn't do anything to him.
That's what you think.
Is he in prison? Did he go to prison?
I don't know.
Then whatever you did, it wasn't enough.
My abuse started at 7. My father was my abuser for several years. I didn't immediately get the sense that what was going on was wrong or bad, but I did get an immediate, internalized sense that there was something in me that wasn't too right. Even though I was never taught at home about, good touch, bad touch kind of thing. I learned it in school, I learned it in church, and so I knew based on what I was taught from other people that that sort of thing obviously is wrong, but oddly I never attributed that to my father at the time. I attributed that to myself, and did that for many years. Growing up and even as an adult, I blamed myself for that. I didn't really start blaming him until much later. I did tell my mother about the abuse when I turned 11. Around that time, I started to become very desperate for help. It was hard. It was damaging in ways I didn't even understand until much later. I had trouble functioning. I was afraid all the time. And I really wanted the help. So I went to my mom at 11. And initially she didn't believe me. Well, she said she didn't believe me. And she was angry, very upset. She almost betrayed, really, is how she acted. I ended up telling her again, coming to her later, within a few months. And at that point, she said to me that I would just have to put up with what was going on until I turned 18 and I could leave home on my own. So at that point, the relationship with my mother started to really deteriorate. From her end, it was as if I hurt her in some way by telling her. And so she started to just withdraw love, affection, attention, even conversation.
It's a quiet subject. We are trained as Grand Bahamians, and the Suvians are more vocal. Grand Bahamians are more reserved. That's what I've found over the years. We are trained to just your uncle did it? Shh. Yeah, I'll just get over it.
And so when that didn't work, I went to other relatives, other adult relatives, and told them what was happening. A couple of them. They did believe me. Almost instantly, actually. But they too didn't want me to say anything. They told me, you know, not to make trouble, don't mention it, leave it alone. I was told that for many years. And then I ended up becoming, in my family, kind of like the enemy, because I wanted out of what was happening to me. I started acting out. I ran away from home quite a few times. I didn't care much about myself or my future. I didn't even believe I had a future at that point. You know, I really wasn't able to see past the day. And I attempted suicide at 15. I had come to a place where I just thought, I was tired of feeling the way that I was feeling. I didn't want to deal with the pain anymore, the hurt, the frustration, the anger, the rejection, I was tired of being blamed for what was happening to me, because I went through that quite a bit. My mother blamed me. My father blamed me. You know, he would tell me things like, look what you're causing, look what you're making me do, and so I had no sense of no self-love, you know, no real understanding of me, and that was just it was unbearable at that point. And so I overdosed on pills, and my sister and my mom found me, and they took me to the hospital to be treated. I was, you know, being treated, had to have my stomach pumped and all of that. And it was a very weird time, because, you know, physically, obviously, I wasn't well. Emotionally, I wasn't well. But for those hours of being in the hospital, somewhere inside, I felt a little bit good just because I wasn't home. Those were my happiest times, no matter where I was. As long as I wasn't in my house and around my father, I felt a bit good. But in hospital, my mother begged me not to tell the doctors why I did what I did, because of course they asked me. And I wanted to. I really wanted to tell them what was going on. I almost kind of felt like this is my moment to free myself from what was going on. But I didn't. I listened to, you know, my mother. I caved under, you know, her pressure, and my always wanting to protect my mom and be there for her and not disappoint her or let her down. So when I was asked by the doctors why I did what I did, I told them I didn't know. I didn't know why. When my mother was asked why I did what I did, she said that she didn't know why, that I had just always been a troubled person.
I've been doing counseling with young people for almost 9 years. This year makes 9. That's the subject that normally comes up with most young people I've encountered. Over the 9-year period, most of them have either been molested, raped, or abused, male and female. And it's a subject that in a lot of cases, when I tried to tell somebody about it, they told me that, oh, because this so-and-so, just leave it alone, or just forgive them, or we sweep it under the carpet, or we become overly protective of them. Shame is killing us. I don't want nobody to know I don't have my virginity anymore. Or I don't want nobody to know that my uncle did this, or my brother, or my sister, my mommy boyfriend. I don't want to be embarrassed. we train our young people to be quiet and suck it up. That's life. That's the term that you hear a lot from our young people. That's life. Yeah, he did it to me, but that's just life. I've been taught to adapt to my suffering and make it a normality. Is this what we're training a lot of our young girls to be? Secret keepers.
We almost instinctively go into victim blaming mode. It's easier for us to, or them, I should say, to, dissect the life of the victim. What did he or she do? What did he or she say? What is it about them that made that happen? We have, when it comes to persons being sexually violated, I think because for many of us on a deep level, we have a very warped and skewed view of sexuality, period. And so I think that when someone is sexually violated, that tainted mindset that we have comes out. I think it does come out. And we don't place the blame where it belongs. We either place it on the victim or we share the blame between the predator and the victim. The shame that we feel in regards to that type of violation, we project it onto the victim, especially if we knew about it happening and did nothing. I think it's easier for people to attack a victim than it is to expose a predator. It should be the opposite. It really should be. But we're a people of hiders, and we thrive in the dark, unfortunately. And so I think that has those things have a lot to do with why we encourage secrecy so much. And then depending on a lot of times who the person is, we're afraid to shed a light on them. They could be your pastor, your politician, police officer, whomever, someone with authority, someone who's well, loved and well respected. And so we don't want to be the ones to shine the light.
I don't think that Bahamians understand why rape occurs. It usually digresses to, it's the Bahamian woman's fault. She's dressed provocatively, she's dressed in a certain way, she said certain things, or, she led him on. Usually the people end up saying, oh, she didn't want it and she's just shame, she's embarrassed, or that kind of thing. A lot of Bahamians do not acknowledge or do not understand that rape does not occur because of sex itself, that they kind of, I think maybe it's maybe a defense mechanism, like they see rape as making love, and they pour the whole bag of sugar on top of it. They do not understand men and women alike. I've heard women say, very bluntly, just, oh well, if she didn't do this, then it wouldn't have happened. I can't remember very many times where I've heard a Bahamian say rape for what it was, that it was a power issue, that the man did not get his way, that he was not getting his way, and so he took what he wanted by force, that it became a physical, violent act. And that, yeah, he may have experienced some kind of sexual pleasure from it, or during it, or after, but the point of it was not pleasure. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but having experienced rape, having experienced sexual assault, having experienced it even within the home with my husband, just these incidents, from what I've experienced, nothing has been about pleasure per se, or at least not sexual pleasure.
Rape is very serious in globally, and is very big in the Bahamas. It has a lot to do with not even a lot of older women have been coming forth, but you see in the tabloids and you hear, especially when you talk to girls later on, and if you're seeing a woman and you hear a lot of stories that they haven't come forth. So I think a bigger issue isn't necessarily the rape, but dealing with child molestation. Okay, that's why it goes back to what I was saying about it starts within the home. You see and you hear a lot of it either in the newspapers, or you hear about it later on when discussing with a female and she gets that level of comfort with you. She's able to tell you because she feels secured. And she tells you that it's normally you hear the cousin or the uncle or some family friend, and they haven't reported it because they're of the impression that if reported, they can get in trouble. I don't think that in our education system, we educate our kids enough on rape culture, on rape itself, and that you should feel safe reporting it because it's wrong and that should not have to happen to you. Psychologically, it plays with their mind and they start to either lash out and they become very promiscuous, or they find themselves actually being mentally shut down and they are very afraid of relationships. They actually just cut the whole world off and stick to themselves.
Rape will never be acceptable in my opinion. Rape is a very horrendous crime, and I don't think no one should have to experience that, because it leaves people broken. It leaves behind a trail of tears, because what happens when someone gets raped, they tend to pass that down to their children. And you have some children develop problems, but they don't know why they're experiencing these type of problems because it was passed down.
The fact that no one wants to address the matter at hand. Either people want you to be silent, or they'll say, go to the police, file your statement and all of that. But at the end of the day, people mostly just wanted to be swept away. And especially if you're dealing with, if it's a colleague who's raped you or assaulted you, you are expected to keep things moving. You are not expected to bring him down or mess up his progress, his career, the track that he is on. I think people really disconnect in the Bahamas from the act. They do not think about the act itself. they think, oh, okay, well, that's sad, or, I'm sorry you went through that. But you can keep going, and especially this whole prayer thing, religion comes up often. For the most part, people just want you to be quiet.
I don't really hear much persons even talk about, like, listen, I was raped before. And I feel like that's a touchy situation, that's a touchy topic as well. Like, you have to really know that I confide in this person to even come out and say, and I believe that's something that we need to work on, because if I had a problem as it relates to rape or molested or being molested or anything as it regards to that, I'm not just gonna come out and say, listen, I've been raped, listen, I've been molested, and that's something I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure a lot of teenagers, a lot of the millennials, a lot of children, a lot of adults, I'm sure they go through that right here on the island, but they don't normally come out and say, well, listen, this has happened to me, and I believe that they don't, because they fear what would happen, you know what I mean?
Honestly, we don't really have a problem with it here. Like, something will happen every now and again, but it isn't like every year we have an instance of rape or something like that. And I think the mindset again of the people, I feel like if the woman isn't drunk and some guy tried to like force himself on her, he would end up in the clinic. Cause be crazy. You just have a lot of crazy females, like they would fight a man. So yeah, so I don't think that's a huge problem here. I mean, as far as like the other islands, that's still surprising. But I think, again, it's like usually when things like that happen, it's because if you go into an area like Baintown and Nassau, you have this small little house and you have at least 3 generations of a family living in that house. So that'll probably be why something like that happens. Because, I mean, just a few weeks ago, they had an incident where these guys drugged this woman, and I feel like these were guys she knew, these weren't strangers, so of course if they give her a drink, she would drink it, and they raped her, and then they took her out, and they had like a June to rape her too, and they recorded because everyone has to put everything on their phones, so naturally they were caught and arrested, and because stupid, like why would you even? In Nassau. Yeah. They recorded? Yeah, they recorded because geniuses with smartphones. They recorded and they sent it around on WhatsApp.
I'm not saying it don't happen on Family Island, but if you look at the rate that happened on the Family Island versus what happened in Nassau, say in a day you'll have like 10 rapes in Nassau, on the Family Island you'll have 0. On a day, for the year, the Family Island will have like 2 rapes. Nassau you'll have like much more than 2. You'll have like up to like 20 or so.
Any insight onto why we have so many rapes?
I can't say why. I don't want to point a finger at any particular sex, as I say, whether it's male or female. We do have females dress more scantily. We do have females that portray a certain way, but that does not mean that they are saying, I want to be raped. They just fall in a culture because what you see on TV, you say it looks good. So I'm not saying that that's why. I cannot give the reason why, or I cannot say why people are raped. What I can say is that you can avoid rape by making yourself less a target. You can always be aware of your surroundings, take up self-defense classes so you can defend yourself. And I'm not saying that you can't be raped, but the possibility would be much more difficult because you are less likely a target.
When I was at COB, there was this case where this girl, she was a lesbian, and like butch, and she would fight boys and she would take their girlfriends. So she had like a really brutal death. Cause like I didn't know her personally, but I had friends who knew her and grew up with her. So it seems like before they murdered her, they raped her. So it's all about the men, I guess, trying to like show their dominance and I guess be like, you are a female, this is the role you should play, and then they murdered her. And I'm like, why? They gang raped her and then they murdered her. Just because. So it was just, well, you're a woman and this is the role you should play, is what I got from it. And they just had to feel like they dominated her. Because she went down fighting, of course. She was just that kind of person.
And I ended up becoming like an enemy in my family, so to speak, because I wouldn't shut up. I kept going to them. I kept going to my mother, and that angered them. That caused them to really, start to distance themselves from me a lot. And it was just the same thing, the rejection, the withdrawal of love and care. And so I started to internalize that a lot as well, and just started to become convinced that there must have been something wrong with me, because not only am I being abused, but everyone that I'm telling anyway, is starting to reject me. And so I was already convinced at that point that I wasn't right somehow. And then I went to my priest, and I was convinced that he would have been the one to help. But his response to me was a bit more of the same. He told me to pray about the abuse and what was happening until it was resolved, and to go home and not to disobey my parents. And so there was no help, no recourse for me, and that was difficult, to say the least. When you're abused sexually, it breaks your spirit. And so I started to call the crisis center here anonymously. Initially, it wasn't about a rescue for me. It wasn't about getting out of the house initially. It was about, I wanted somebody to hear me, because for so many years, no one was listening to me. No one was paying attention to me. No one cared. And I wanted someone to just care and to just tell me that it wasn't my fault, that, I'm not weird, I'm not off, I'm not wrong. And I wanted someone to acknowledge that what was happening to me should not have been happening. And I got that with the lady that I was speaking to. And eventually, after about 4 or 5 calls, I trusted the lady enough to tell her my name and the school that I was going to at the time. And that led to police investigation and social workers coming to the school and questioning me. And I remember the fear that I had. I kept telling them, my mom's gonna kill me, she's gonna hate me, this is gonna hurt her, just forget everything I said, and I won't be any trouble. And it was so indicative of just how mentally damaged I was at that point, because I was convinced that I had caused this major problem for my family, as opposed to me being a victim of this abuse for so long and needing to be rescued from it, really.
I had a situation I know of somebody. They got molested by their brother, and the subject was, just keep them separated, don't. So I live in a home with my assailant, but I have to keep quiet about it. and pretend like it never happened. Or you never told me what happened to me, so when I become older and I understand it, I try to commit suicide. Or I feel like a dirty human being. Or I am made to believe it's your fault or my fault. Or I wasn't watching you enough, so you ain't going to school. No, 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 no. There's a boy there that they could do it to you. Because we fail to address the root of the issue. And I'm so sorry, this is a passionate subject for me. Sweeping things under the carpet will never cause it to be properly addressed. The Bible says, and I only could go by these points of references and not to be overly religious, to offend. Confess your faults one to another, praying, for the prayers of the righteous man availeth much. If we never talk about the issue, if you never express how you feel in your story, then how can I save another young lady, another young man from that same problem? When that secret thing happened, the thing that nobody talks about in the family, that subject, that when Christmas happens and everybody drink too much eggnog, when it comes up, big breakdown happens, yeah, that subject, that's why when we get married, marriages fall apart. That's why when we have children, we cloak our children, and we do these subject things, because from a child I was trained to just shut up, suck it up, and it's happening to our females, our young men. And then when a rise in homosexuality happens, oh, shh. Yeah, he liked that, but shh. How? Well, I heard, but we don't talk about it. His uncle molested him. Now he's 30 years old, and you could judge him for homosexuality. But when he was 6 and you never talked about it, or never addressed it, or never told him right from wrong, you ought to order.
Things started to get a little bit dicey for me around that time, because after coming out of the hospital, my mother spoke to me and she said, you know, you're drawing attention to yourself, you're drawing attention to the family. People are asking me from church, and my friends are asking me, why did you try to kill yourself? So you just need to stop what you're doing and leave it alone. And that kind of, well, that definitely amped up my desperation, because for me, you know, I'm your daughter, and I literally just, you know, put myself in a position where you never would have seen me again. I would have been gone forever, and your concern is the attention and the questions, rather, that it would bring. So it was hurtful to me that it was hurtful to me that after all that, she was still so concerned about keeping the family secret.
Incest is a big problem in the country, and I don't think people realize that. It stated that in most cases, women know their perpetrators, and men actually who are raped don't know their perpetrators, usually. But women usually all know their perpetrators. Either it's a friend of someone, or it's a family member, or it's somebody they grew up with all their lives. So it's amazing to me, you know. It makes you kind of paranoid, really, especially when you have kids. And in this day and age, you're paranoid for both the male and the female. One time ago, it was only the females. Again, in the school systems, you hear about teachers who sleep with students, both male and female. And I think the only outcry I really ever hear is if it's a male who's perpetrated something against another male. If he does it against a female, somehow that's to be accepted because they're the opposite sex, they're going to be interested. But I have a problem with that, and in most cases they just transfer the problem. So you had a problem at this particular school, you take that person and you send them to another school to do what? Perpetrate the same thing? I have a problem with that. You're not protecting the kids by hiding the problem or acting like an ostrich and you stick your head in the sand. How could you do that? That's children. I wouldn't want that to happen to my children. So why would you allow it against anybody else's children.
So I recanted my story and I told the police I had made everything up, and so the charges were dropped against my father and I was sent back home.
And how was life after that? Did you stay in your parents' home for?
I did. I stayed at home for the next year. Little under a year. But that was not easy for me because I had finally known what peace and safety felt like. And even though the abuse was no longer going on, I hated being there. And I hated being around my father. I hated the sight of him. I hated hearing his voice, everything. It was just sheer anger and just resentment and bitterness for me at that point. And so he and I argued a lot. I didn't want to follow any rules he set down, even if the rules made sense. I didn't want my life affected by him anymore. And so we argued a lot, and it was very chaotic in my home. I mean, my home life was always chaotic. It was never peaceful or loving, but it was more chaotic at that point because at that point I was fighting back verbally. I was not, just taking everything. And so that really angered my mother, and she couldn't take my not wanting to respect my father. I mean, there was nothing to respect, of course, but she didn't see it that way, and so she told me I had to leave. And so she put me out at 17. I wasn't happy I was happy that she did it, but I was afraid at the same time. I didn't have anywhere to go. No one in my family was willing to take me in because at that point, they wanted nothing to do with me. And they made it clear that they wanted nothing to do with me. And so I turned to much older friends, or an older friend, and she took me in.
First of all, rape is rape. I don't care if you're married or not, rape is rape. But boy, that's hard because we supposed to be a Christian nation, and the Bible does speak about you belonging to your husband belonging to you, or some sorts of that, right? But I don't believe rape is rape. Now, when a married man rapes his wife, that is rape. That still is rape to me. That still is rape. And I am a married woman, so I do consider that as rape. I feel most, especially Bahamians and Bahamian men, use the Bible to condone their actions. Yes, that is why. I don't think it's accepted by the women. They have no other choice but to accept it.
Why do you say they have no other choice?
My husband raped me. I'm going to a police officer who's most likely gonna be a male. He has the same view as my husband. I'm not gonna get nowhere with him. I'm not gonna get justice.
In this country, the women speak out and they get what they want. Now it's to the bedroom, marital rape. And based on what is going on so far, that's gonna go into law. And he can spend 21 years for raping his wife when the Bible states that when you get married, your body is no longer yours, it is your husband's. But why would a man resort to rape? You know why he would resort to rape? Because me, as a dominating female, and I get my domineering from my grandmother and my great-grandmother because I saw how they treated their husbands. Because when I go and sit down in air condition, they go and wear one old shoes and they get cutlass and they go weed and they do their part to bring in. They support me. But for some reason, I get it in my head because I sit in a different seat, I'm better. And so, this man who has been ostracized by his wife, by his children, then his domineering wife tells him, I'm not cooking today. You want something to eat? Fix it yourself. That's in the kitchen. Then when it gets to the bedroom, she says, I don't want sex. So he's gonna have to sleep it off. And then when the next night comes, she says the same thing. She acts mad, she have a headache, there's some problem. And because there is this pursuing animal nature within a man, and he already knows this is my wife, she's laying next to me in the bed and I can't touch her. And so he takes it. And then we win again because we go to the courts. We let our voices be heard. Rape is happening in our bedroom. But we brought it on because he has a need. He's been born with that need. He has to have sex. He has to have it. He have to have it. And we know a man have to have sex. You're laying in the same bed with him. He knew you before. How you expect to tame him? How do you expect him to be a child? He's your husband. And so if you want to blame anybody, and I'm standing on the ground of right, blame us. If rape happens in the bedroom, in most cases, it's because of us.
If there's marital rape, that means the relation, something is wrong with that relationship. There's a breakdown in that relationship. Now, in the instance when you have men being married, raping a woman in marital rape, that man is abusive, I think, even before it comes to that. That's just part of the abuse. That's a part of the abuse. Marital rape is a part of the abuse. And if the woman is not responsive, it's because she has taken so much, because she has endured so much from him, and her response to him now is, virtually nil, because all she knows from him is abuse. And because he's abusive by nature, he doesn't see marital rape as doing anything wrong, because that's part of his nature, is to be abusive. Rape, I think, should be a no-no in or out marriage. It has nothing to do with love or showing love. It's about showing who is stronger, or who has control over the next person.
Yeah, but under the Bible also gave you good. I mean, abusing a woman, raping a woman, that's against the Bible as well. So you can't justify it on one side just to suit you.
No.
I mean, for me, I not to say that I am in support of it, I am against it, but my style, in terms of the law or whatever, I really can't say, but the actual action of rape, I don't think that's a no-no, because I have sisters, I have a wife, I have a daughter, I have aunts and cousins, and I hate to see or learn of them going through that, because I may get a visit from my good friend in the corner over there. I mean, women should be treated respectfully, loving. They're the greatest thing God put on this earth.
When you went to the altar, you say, to honor, to love, and to cherish, right? Look at it. A man or woman laying in bed every night. Every time he touches her, she takes his hand and throw it off. Say no. A man, I'm not saying I for it, a man should rape a woman, but you say 5, 6, almost a week. Every time you put your hand on a woman, she throw it off. No. I don't think he should wait till she's ready, or go look for something else. I really don't think he should abuse because she said no, he should abuse the woman. My point is, gold. He shouldn't do it, But if, you know, you lay inside a woman 5, 6, 7 days, and she keep telling you no, 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 something ain't right.
So you get to the bottom of that problem.
Yeah, you get to the bottom of it, you know, find out what's going on.
If there was a love relationship before and it's broken down to the point where you now something is wrong.
For it, I was built to speak and use my voice. And I have, over the years, developed a real heart and a love and a passion for other survivors and being there for them and giving them what I didn't have. That was, and that still is, what drives me, because I know what it is to be very alone and very afraid. And I know what it is for someone to tell you that your pain doesn't matter. I know what it is to, a lot of people don't understand what that sort of violation does to you internally. And so I wanted to be a person to embrace other survivors and tell them, it's okay, you can talk about it, you're not wrong for talking about it. You're not wrong for taking as long as you need to take to talk about it. And I wanted to help. I wanted to help show other survivors that they can thrive, they can have a good life, in spite of what they went through growing up, that they are beautiful, that they are important, that they are someone. You know, they're not the bottom of the barrel. They're not horrible people. They're not at fault. They are not the cause of what happened, and that's my heart. I can't imagine doing or being anything else. So that's why I decided to come forward again publicly, and was asked by someone else to be a part of a series, and I agreed right away to do it.
I do know, he's not that close to me, but he is a friend, and now that I think of it, he actually did mention to me before years ago that he was molested by a family member. But his parents did nothing about it. You know what I mean? Like, they knew, but they did nothing. And I believe, like, in circumstances like that, it's like, all right, so why do I come out and talk if I don't get help? If the person who did it to me is still walking around free, you know what I mean? And they don't never do anything about it. And I believe if we start acting on certain situations, you know, not saying, whatever the person say is automatically truth, but if you look into some situations and you resolve it, then I believe more persons would come out. Even like as it relates to crimes, you have more persons, you have senseless crimes being committed, but there aren't persons who will come out to say, well, I witnessed the crime. Why? Because their identity is in private. You know what I mean? You go there and you say, well, I saw this happen, or this happened, and it's like, all right, now my information is out there, you know, so the privacy is not there. And I believe that's why a lot of persons don't come out, they don't say it. And then too, like the pain is like, I'm sure they go through a different pain than what we go through, those who haven't been molested or haven't been raped. And so their pain and their burden and their fear is way greater than someone who haven't, you know.
First and foremost, we must remove the stigma. It is what it is. We need to remove the stigma. Somebody took advantage of you. That we need to be able to be direct. No, you were not touched, you were taken advantage of. We need to remove the stigma. It happened. It's real. It occurred. Let's talk about it. We need to remove the stigma. Shame. Bahamians in general battle with pride. I can't fathom to tell somebody that my daughter got raped. That make me seem like a bad parent. Girl, you better don't tell nobody about this, because I would not be able to go to church anymore. Or I wouldn't be able to go to my lodge meeting anymore. These things. Remove the stigma. This ain't about you or me. This is about the person and the person who did it. Second thing, we need to have corrective measures in place to deal with the subject matter. I find that one of the principal issues that we're facing is when the person gets raped and their assailant goes right back out on bail. Or their assailant could come right to their house and say, if you talk, I could do you this. We need to have more proactive measures to deal with the issues that we're facing. People need to feel protected. And also people need to feel as if judgment is being dealt with as swift as possible. Because everything has protocols. To think it can happen overnight is idiotic to a degree. But to believe that it will be dealt with in a week, or 3 weeks, or a month, not 5 years from now, the case coming up after it and settled. Have you ever had Kool-Aid and the sugar settled at the bottom? Then the following night you go to drink the bottom of that Kool-Aid and you almost go into diabetic shock? That's the issue. 5 years later, a case that happened in 1995. Why you won't come in 2017 to bring that up? To dredge up all the sickness and thing I done suppress. You want to bring that up in 2017? No, I don't want to be bothered. So you know what happens? Because that no, I don't want to be bothered happens, he goes and rapes somebody else. Let's be quick about it. It happened this year, deal with it this year. Don't wait until people have already moved on. Then they don't put Band-Aid over that. Proactive. Be swift. Be diligent. And lastly, recovery. We need more recovery forums. After I've been raped, after the court case, what next? What I'm going to do with my life? I'm no longer a virgin. I'm no longer innocent. I had an encounter. I need trauma treatment. We need to train our young girls in different subjects, our young men in different subjects. We need to build them, strengthen them, undergird them, and redeposit value in them. And lastly, don't be afraid to share your story. When you get in the right place and you encounter somebody, don't just take what I've told you and keep it. Be a light to others. Be a salt in somebody's nice recipe of a great souffle, a good peas and rice pot. Season that real good and be a help to somebody else. And as you wash, rinse, repeat that cycle, only good things could happen from there.
Could you tell us about what you have done, the movement that you have started, and where you'd like to see that go?
Well, about 5 years ago, I started a Facebook group called Silent No More Bahamas. And that came out of, I wanted to create, this safe space where survivors could speak, either, doing it themselves or anonymously through me. I post a lot of stories for persons anonymously. That too was just all about giving back and giving people the opportunity that I was robbed of as a child. And it started to grow very, very quickly. I didn't even expect for it to grow as much as it did. But over the years, hundreds of persons have shared their stories with me and asked me to share it for them, or, just developed the strength to want to do it themselves through the group. And I've been able to meet some pretty amazing persons who are also, in the community trying to do the same thing. Where do I want to see it go? Wow, there's so many things. There's so many things. Of course, I want the group to be more recognized in the community, to partner with other organizations that are about the same thing that we're about, and create more community outreach and just to grow throughout the country and educating our young people, our children, and also our adults, because our adults need to be educated as well, about the realness of this epidemic and what it looks like, signs to look for, and it's about embracing. It's about embracing survivors, and it's about the survivors knowing that they're not alone, because that's important. You feel so much isolation as a victim, and I want to start to move people from victimhood to survivorhood. That's not a word, but yeah.
The offender is those who are familiar with your
That's
children,
right.
those who are close to your children.
That's
Everybody's a suspect. Hallelujah. Everybody's a suspect when it comes to your children. You have to protect them. You have to watch over them.
Yes.
And we want to appeal to the government. Hey, I come in agreement with the president. We appeal to the government to put laws in place, enact the laws that are there. There must be a register so that we know who are child molesters. And we must be able to go online and pull them up and know where they are. We can't have them near our children. We must stand up and we must let our voices be heard. Somebody shout, I will let my voice be heard. I will let my voice be heard. Records to come. Silence no more. Silence no more. Silence no more.
What has been the reaction from the public with your recent public?
That's been mixed. I like to start with the positive. The positive reaction has been tremendous and overwhelming. I got a lot of love, a lot of support, which was beautiful. And then the other positive side, which I guess can also be a negative, a lot of people came out to me about their own survival stories. And even though I knew that child sexual abuse is such a huge problem in this country, I knew that for a very long time. When you're hit with the stories, it kind of opens your eyes again in a new way to the reality. And so many people, hundreds of people, started to tell me, they were molested by their father, their uncle, cousin, family friend, and 95, I kid you not, 95% of the messages that I got, it was just like me. They either weren't believed or they were believed, but they were pressured not to say anything. And when they wanted to say anything or did, they were demonized for it. And they were telling me, how they tried to cope. Some of them also attempted suicide. Some of them turned to alcohol, which I could relate because I developed a pretty active drinking problem at 17. Some of them developed eating disorders, which I could also relate to. A lot of them dealt and still deal with depression, anxiety, and it was just this outpouring of people wanting to talk and share their stories. So there was that. But then on the negative side of it, I got a lot of backlash from my family. A lot of backlash. Threats of lawsuits and them publicly telling persons, on social media or otherwise that I'm crazy, unstable, trying to destroy the family, just doing what they can to get people to not believe me. So it was a mixed reaction that I got, that I'm still getting, actually.
I could say one thing for sure, and I go on record to say it today. A lot of the big trees are a result of little seeds that were never addressed. And until we hit the root, until we get to the subject of it, until we're willing to expose it, identify it, and then give remedy to it, we will continue to live a cycle of a forest of problems. Sweet fruits, but nasty trees. And it was birthed out of the lack of communication and exposure of the truth. There's easy ways to expose the truth. I could talk about it all day, but what are the solutions and remedies in place? First and foremost, have more forums for young men. Let's clear the air. You were molested by another man, I understand, but you don't have to be the way that you're trying to be. That is not okay. No, let me teach you the right way. Young lady, no, you don't have to be all over the place because you got raped. You don't have to devalue your body. Let me show you the right way. We need forums with real issues. Learning how to save money in the bank is not an issue. Dealing with the molester head on and my court case is an issue. Facing my assailant who did me wrong, that's an issue. Let's learn how to have forums to address real problems, real issues, and root problems. And please forgive me for my passion about it. This is a subject that as a pastor and as one who has it happen in their family knows, the hush-hushness got to end. It got to end.
I have found, sadly, that we still, in our country, we have not come to a place where we encourage survivors to speak out. We are a society of ostriches, you know? We want to bury our heads in the sand. We don't want to face reality. We want to run and hide and pretend that the reality doesn't exist at the expense of persons who are being hurt. We vilify and we demonize survivors for just wanting to speak, which is interesting because it's your trauma, right? It's your hurt. It happened to you. So you have every right to talk about it as much as you want. But there's this overwhelming thing of just let it go. You know, it's over. The damage is done. Just let it go. I've heard those 3 words, let it go, so many times. I can't even, I've heard it a lot. And I wanna destroy that. I want that dismantled because the pain, the psychological, the emotional pain, and the scars of sexual abuse are very real and they're long lasting. They don't just disappear one day. You know, you have to deal with it. And I certainly, it took me a long time. I'm still dealing with it. I am still dealing with it. I get to a point where I deal and it becomes a bit too painful and I stop for a while and then I deal again. And I want this country to become sensitized to the epidemic. It is an epidemic in this country. I want us as a people to start to support survivors and to start and continue the conversation. Because I don't think, you know, it won't change with just 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 conversations and then we say, oh, well, we've done our part and that's it. It needs to keep, it can't stop. Because the abuse isn't stopping, so the conversation cannot stop. I want the leaders of this country to take this seriously. Abusers to, you know, have to face stiffer penalties under the law. And I want us as a society to stop protecting and enabling abusers because we have that down to an art form in this country. And we know, that's the thing. We know for the most part who these abusers are. We don't say anything. We don't call them out. We know our cousin or our niece or our child is being abused and we allow it. We say nothing. We don't want to disrupt our comfortable lives. We don't want the community to know. We don't want the community to know that we're hiding that secret and protecting the abuser. That was certainly the case with my family. I think for the most part, even now, they don't want people to know that they protected my father for the longest time, even if it was just about protecting themselves, because now you know what has happened and you didn't do anything. And so you don't want people to know you didn't do anything. And it's easier, I think, for people like that to attack the victim and to say, oh, well, she or he is a liar. It's easier, I think, for people to do that. But it's wrong. You know, lives are being ruined and destroyed. There are so many. The level of hurt and the pain and the devastation is it's so real. And so I want survivors to know. I want them to have a place where they can go and talk and feel safe and be free. And they don't have to worry about being attacked on the back end just for telling their truth. We hate the truth in this country. We shouldn't, but we do. And it's sad, and we don't like it when people develop the courage to shine a light on places that have been dark for so long. We reject that sort of thing, and I want that to no longer be a part of my country. I want my children to grow up in a country where abuse is not the norm. That's what I want.